Chapter 8: The Paradoxal Era from 1968 to 1980. This era was an age of conservatism, where many of the presidents during this era were very conservative, although because of the bipartisan Congress, there was still a lot of expanding of social programs that had already existed during this time, even though the Republican Party maybe didn't support as much social reform that had been happening in years prior. The main presidents, the people that made the biggest impact during this time, were Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and Jimmy Carter. Richard Nixon was responsible for implementing quite a few acts, as well as expanding different programs that had already been established, like the food stamp program. Some of the programs that he enacted were Family Planning and Population Research Act, OSHA, Local Physical Assistance Act, the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act, and Rehabilitation Act. The food stamp program that he expanded in the early years of his presidency, he basically created national eligibility standards for the food stamp program, and later federalized it and made it mandatory for certain groups of people. And, the biggest thing about this era was that even though it was known as a conservative era, the social spending during this time actually went up. And even though a lot of Nixon's rhetoric was, very conservative, his expanding and the programs and the spending that he supported was actually a little more liberal than maybe a lot of people thought that he was. A lot of people, uplift him for this era, for coming up with all of these social reforms, but a lot of which he expanded upon was really already in place from other eras, including, Social Security, expanding the Social Security to include more people, as well as the food stamp program, assisting more people in bigger ways. And, this is where we really start to see legislation for civil rights acts go into play, as well as health policy legislation.